All right, so today we're going to continue our discussion of establishing different types of basic terminology that we're working with for fashion, apparel, textile, retailing. And in particular, we're also talking about how this fits within multi-channel retailing as well. So keep that in mind as we talk. So the first thing we have to establish is a working definition of what we mean by product, because that word is thrown around a lot, especially in business. So when we refer to a product, we mean anything that is offered to a specified market. So that's one of the keys. And it's offered to this market to get their attention and to get them to acquire the product, and also for them to use it or consume it. So another thing we don't always think about is that a product doesn't have to be tangible. So it doesn't have to be a physical object. It can also be a type of service. So for example, if you walk into Neiman Marcus and visit with a personal shopper, that service is a product that they are offering you. So in that way, you can also think of a product with that second bullet point there. Any item or service that satisfies the need of the customer. So there's two main types of apparel, textile, fashion, retailing. And I know that there are several of you who are interested in opening some type of store or retail concept in the future as part of your career. And so one of the things that I'll be doing is orienting not only to the larger retail industry, but also how do you start a concept that you want to move forward with. So I will cover those both as much as possible. So there's always going to be in retail those companies or entrepreneurs that create the product they sell. And then there are those who sell an existing product. So you can see on the slide here, there's an example of Opal Oceans Apparel. This is Elisa, who you see on the slide. She's a former apparel design student of mine at Oregon State University, and she now runs a successful online business with her own original designs. And she's obsessed with holographic fabric, and so that's one of the things that she focuses on. Or she would be the example of someone who creates the product they sell. Or you could wholesale or source an existing product. So it's important that we establish why this terminology is important, because you need to be able to correctly use this terminology, whether you are writing a business plan or whether you are interacting with buyers, wholesalers, and other people in the industry. And this is also something that you want to keep in mind for your Shark Tank pitch in a couple weeks. The more you use proper terminology, the more you lend credibility to your pitch and what you're trying to persuade someone to buy into. So remember that. So there's also this aspect of needing to dissect the elements of a product. And this is particularly important when it comes to fashion retailing. or apparel and textile, all interchangeable in many ways. So one of the best ways that you can start to understand and analyze a product is to divide it into parts. And so there's 3 levels of a product that you need to know. You've got the core level, you've got the formal or actual level, and then you've got the augmented level. So when we talk about the core level, this is really the true product. That's how we refer to it. So in other words, it would be the product's main benefit or its main service to you. So for example, for an entrepreneur that intends to open a business that sells handbags, the core product is going to be a handbag. So when we move to the formal level, what we're looking at is things like packaging, the brand name, and maybe if there's a possibility of brand loyalty. There's the quality of the product and the styling. So styling is a main thing that we're going to be weaving throughout all of this course because it is very important with apparel and textile retailing. And so it's important to understand that styling falls under this mid-level of what a product is. And then the final level is augmented. What we mean by that is any product extra. So it's the things that you do to go above and beyond for the product. It's advertising and promotion. It could be the warranty that you offer. Or it could also be something like after-sale services, such as return policies. So whether you are creating your retail product or you're retailing an existing product, you have to consider the degree to which the merchandise meets these 3 levels. So that's something to keep in mind too as you form your own retail concept, is maybe you want to make a chart and write out for some of the things you've considered, how does this merchandise meet these levels? So for some cases, the augmented level is going to be very minimal, and that's okay. They don't have to be equal. Sometimes it's really just price and quality and brand name that someone is concerned with, and they don't care so much about the augmentation. So another way you could think of this is if a consumer elects to pay $40 for some type of fashion watch with an unknown brand, rather than pay a high price for a classic but expensively branded watch, then this is an example of a exchanging low augmentation and low price. So you are working with those, but they are in opposition to each other. So as we transition into discussing the types of products that we have, so the first thing I'll tell you is you don't need to worry about writing this down. You will have access to it after class. But I do want to show it to you at this point before we discuss these, because you can see on this idea web here that product classification can be rather complex in apparel and textiles. And so this is why it's really important to know what you want to sell and the benefits that consumers will find in it. So we're going to discuss each of these, but for now I just want you to observe the complexity of the classifications that we have going on here. So we're going to start with the tangibility category. So when we talk about tangibility, we already mentioned this a little bit. It's a pretty straightforward definition. And we're just really talking about whether something is physical or not. So if you have a product that is classified as intangible, that really means that it's a service or an idea. So again, like we talked about with the personal shopping example. If you have a tangible product, it's physical and touchable. So you can further divide tangible products into another classification. And that is durable and non-durable products. So if you have a non-durable product, it would normally be consumed in 1 to 2 uses, and then you're done with it. So there are a lot of people that make the argument that fast fashion, so things that we buy at Forever 21 and similar stores, are non-durable products. That is, of course, up for debate, as you can wear it more than just 1 or 2 times. We could say it's less durable. Another non-durable good would be pantyhose or stockings for women. So if you're lucky, you can wear them more than a few times, but often they don't last that long because they snag when you least want them to. And often people don't wear them anymore, so they make them at a cheaper quality. So if we talk about durable goods, it's just the opposite of non-durable. So they normally survive many uses. So this is going to be your general apparel and accessories and most types of fabric. And then our next classification is price point. So in your project handout for part 1 for the store simulation, you have a detailed list of what the price points are and examples of them. But for the purposes of talking about products, we're going to make 2 classifications. There's low end and there's high end. Of course, it gets more complex than this, but this is a general classification that's often used. So if you are a high-end price point product, you're at the top of the pricing scale. So these are going to be your Alexander McQueen's, your Dolce & Gabbana's, those types of things. Your low-end products are really going to be geared towards a lower price for a consumer that is budget conscious. So then we look at classifications in terms of assortment. So here we've got hard products and we've got soft products. In terms of hard products, when you generally talk about retail merchandise, hard products mean appliances and electronics and home furnishings. So if we were to translate what a hard product is to apparel and textiles, a sewing machine would be an applicable example. You could also consider a couch a hard product because it is a more large-scale home furnishing that incorporates textiles. And then your soft products are just really referring to anything made with fabric, so textile and apparel. And this can include accessories as well. So that example would be with the men's outfits that you see under the couch. And then we can move to our longevity classification. So this is basically making a distinction between whether a product is fashion focused on a trend or if it's more of a classic product. So if you're working with a fashion product, it's only popular for a given period of time. And then if you have a staple, or what's also known as a basic product, those are things that are always stocked and are steadily in demand, or they're in demand and they're rarely influenced much by a fashion change. So you might see fashion elements that will affect these types of products, but the demand will not diminish simply because a fashion element is introduced for a time. So examples of this would be black slacks or pants for women, and also a basic men's t-shirt. So you'll want to think about, for your retail concept, do you want to be involved with fashion products, or do you want staple or basic products? And then lastly, for types of products, we have the classification of brand preference and frequency of use. And there's 4 types of products under this classification. The first is a convenience good. So these are goods that the customer purchases both frequently and very easily. And another key piece of this type of product is that customers purchase it with minimal comparison shopping, if any at all. So again, pantyhose or stockings for women would be considered a convenience good. Socks would be another for most consumers. Another way you can think of this is that this often happens when you're on vacation, say at Disney World. You can see a shirt that you like, as with the shirt with Mickey Mouse in the bottom corner there. And because you know you're there and you like it, you buy it without further evaluation. So this is one of those situations in which tourism greatly contributes to the sale of convenience product. And then you have shopping products. So these are products that the customer shops around for and makes very specific comparisons using criteria that they set. So this could apply to special occasion apparel. It could apply to outerwear. So if you're buying a new winter coat, those can often be more expensive. Or you might want a more specific brand or style. And wedding dresses are a very specific example of this. You're not just going to walk into a store and buy your dress without knowing the criteria you're going to use to choose it. And you're likely going to do some shopping around, even if it's online, ahead of time. And then the third type of product is a specialty good. So this is when you have a group of purchasers or consumers who are habitually willing to make a special effort to purchase it. And the reason you would make the effort to purchase it is often because it has unique characteristics or a specific brand identification. So if you like to have things with a logo on it, if you buy Michael Kors sandals that have the little MK medallion on it, that would be a specialty good. Another one would be UGG boots. So the example you see on the slide there. And then the last type of product is the unsought product. So these are interesting because the customer does not seek them out. And the person who is promoting it actually lets the consumer know that they didn't know that they needed it or wanted it until they presented it to them, and now they see a use for it. So one of the most classic examples of this type of product is the Snuggie. And cheesy as it may be, it flew off the shelves because people said, wow, you added arms to a blanket? I never thought of that. And so at that point, people saw a use for it. So bringing this all back together, now that we've defined all of these types of products, look once again at this organization chart. Look at how they all relate to one another, but also look at how each classification represents different ends of the spectrum as well. So you've got tangible, and then the opposite is intangible. Low end, opposite is high end. So you're always going to have very noticeable distinctions in how these products differ. And that's what you need to know to form a sound retail concept. So keeping with the idea of discussing products, how do you buy and stock products for your retail store? So there's three concepts that are going to inform where we go from here on out with building a store. There's variety, assortment, and stock keeping units. So retailers can offer the same merchandise. It doesn't have to be exclusive merchandise, but they may set themselves apart because they differ in variety and assortment of the merchandise offered. So that's something else to keep in mind for your Shark Tank pitch as well. Do you want to focus more on variety Or do you want to focus more on a narrow grouping of merchandise? So when we define variety, what we really are talking about here is the number of merchandise categories that a retailer offers. So this is also known commonly in industry as breadth of merchandise. And then we also have assortment. So this is the number of different items that are offered within a merchandise category. And so this is also known in industry as depth of merchandise. So you can see at the bottom of the slide there's a graphic that helps guide you through what that looks like and means in a retail setting. And you'll have access to the PowerPoint again after class. And so if you want to look at this more closely to get a better understanding, please feel free. Notice how breadth is including shoes, appliances, CDs, men's clothing. And then under men's clothing, for example, there's suits, ties, jackets, overcoats, socks, and shirts. And then the last term here is your stock keeping unit. So each different item of merchandise is called a stock keeping unit. And by each item of merchandise, I mean every single iteration of a product. So if it is the same exact item, but it has different colors, that's 2 different units, or SKUs as we call them. If then one color has 3 different sizes, each of those is then broken down further into different SKUs. So to make and read a SKU, you have to understand which set of numbers corresponds to which information. So it all means something in a code system. So you can see an example here on the slide of how you might break down different SKUs. So there's information that includes the brand, and you can see this on a hang tag when you look in a retail store. It includes what the item is, the type, the size, and the color. And that's going to be different for every single item. So it can be very, very complex. So an example would be a blue long sleeve button down collar Ralph Lauren shirt that's size medium. That would need its own SKU. And then we have merchandise product assortment. So there's additional terms that you need to know with regard to variety and assortment. And these relate to selection of merchandise. So a common term that you'll hear in retailing is merchandise assortment. And this will factor into the building of your store simulation later in the semester. This is just referring to the selection of inventory that a retailer carries or that a manufacturer produces. And then inventory is the merchandise selection that is carried by the retailer, including all of the product types. So when you decide what product assortment you want, you have to decide if you want a general line or if you want a limited line. And a limited line is really discussing, let me go back to general line first. A general line is referring to a very wide variety of merchandise. So in other words, you have great breadth. So for example, this would be a department store that features women's, men's, children's apparel, and also home furnishings. And then a limited line actually represents the very other end of the spectrum. So you've got a very specific and particular product category. And this includes a depth of selection. So that's the key difference, the breadth and depth. So an example would be, so this image on the slide here is an example of another clothing brand owned by a former student of mine. He's based out of Oregon, and his brand is called Eterna. And they have a limited line product assortment because they focus upon the product category of graphic t-shirts with a very particular aesthetic. So that would be a limited line in terms of product assortment. So if you do have interest in starting a fashion apparel retailing concept or a store in the future, I have lots of people who have done it that I can hook you up with for networking. And lastly, the product life cycle. So how many of you have seen this before? Does this look somewhat familiar? Okay. So there's different ways that people represent this. But for the purposes of our work, we're going to look at it from the perspective of joining retailing and fashion. And so I've used the terms that describe the chart from fashion, but the definitions are a bit more retailer focused, mixed with fashion terms. So it's important that you understand not only your product, but also the product life cycle, because that will determine who your consumer is. And the image on the slide here gives you a handy chart that you can use in creating your retail concept, because it tells you, if I want to have a mass market look, then this is going to be my sales probability, my market share, who my audience is, and so forth. So this will be something handy for you to refer to. So that's where the product life cycle comes in, is really helping you to understand other factors that relate to your product. So this life cycle is designed to tell you when a product is going to be at the mature stage or the peak of its popularity. And then also the characteristics or factors that might influence that. So there's 5 stages, and so we start with adoption. So adoption is the point at which innovative products or new products are introduced. And at that point, they're really appealing to fashion leaders only. So people that consider themselves very fashion forward. And the goal at this stage is finding ways to reach your consumer. So one of the ways that they reach consumers is through celebrities, showing dresses on the red carpet and at other events. So then if, say, Jennifer Lopez wears some type of new style by Marc Jacobs to the MTV Music Awards, then the general public is going to see it on TV, and that creates demand. And then our next stage is growth. So this is the stage in which a larger number of consumers are beginning to catch on to the product. They're also starting to purchase it. Is it hard to see in the back?
It's getting small and smaller.
Okay. Okay. Let me I will remember that. What's the best part you can see up until?
I think just the title.
Can you see, like, is the size of the font too small as well?
Is it? Yes or no? Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I will remember that, and I will adjust where I put things on the slides. Working with this PowerPoint template, it kind of like resizes things weird sometimes, so I will fix that for you, and it should be better next time. Okay, so when we're in the increase stage, we are increasing our profits as well because people are getting introduced to it. So this is the point at which manufacturers begin to copy at a lower price point. And then peak is the stage where your sales have plateaued. So it's being mass produced and mass marketed. So this is the stage at which you would probably see an apparel product at Target, for example. The decline is when people lose interest in the product. So you're beginning to see it on sales racks and in discount stores. And this is usually the stage at which your fashion leaders have either moved on already or they're starting to move on to a new fashion or a new product. And then finally, there's rejection. So this is when people are no longer purchasing the product. And there's extreme markdown prices, usually in the range of 70 to 80% is when you know it has been rejected. And then you have it transferred to outlet stores like Marshall's or Ross. So as you prepare to do your first checking for comprehension assignment, one thing I want to point out is notice how there is a link between the type of retailer and the consumer that is served during the product life cycle by that retailer. So for example, we established Marshall's as an off-price retailer that makes products available once rejection stages hit or even before. So they're really catering to a very specific type of consumer based upon the type of retailer that they are. Okay. So any questions about what we've just covered? Good to go? All right. So if you think of questions, let me know. And also, if any of this sparks ideas for you in terms of developing your retail concept and you want to talk through it with me, I'm happy to do that. So we're going to switch gears now. So if you want to pull out your survey handout that you got at the beginning of class again.
And if you forgot to put your badge on in front of you, please just put it back right now. Otherwise, I will mark you without a badge today.
So what you have in front of you, as I explained at the start of class, is a selection of surveys that have been completed by real people with their real data. And so you are actually now at the point as an entrepreneur with your store simulation to determine where your retail concept can best serve the consumer. So once you have the target market data of everyone in class, and that will be as of Monday, they're all due, you are going to then have access to all of them, and no one's name is on them, so you don't have to worry about that. And you are going to actually go through and tabulate how many times someone said something as a response. And once you have all of that data together, then you're going to look through it and you're going to say, well, I noticed that there is a large group of people in my market research that is really interested in basics for their wardrobe. So I might go in that direction. Or, wow, there's some people that are just really interested in pattern and sparkle and sequins, and so maybe I should cater to that. So you can use this to find themes in whatever way you see meaningful. So what I want you to practice doing, and these are not going to be the groups that you work with forever in the project, just as we get started here. Get into groups however you would like to, and I want you to work together and start tabulating some of this and seeing what early themes you can make out of it. So with the questions that are not numerically based, what you want to do is make a list of all the words, say the examples where it asks you to choose 3 words to describe your style. Write down all the words that you notice people writing and then see what commonalities you see among them. So I will allow you to go to work on that, and then just make sure that your group records what you're doing, at least on one piece of paper, and show it to Shui before you leave. And I will be here as you have questions.